Welcome to the Horror Syndicate Discourse. I had to change the music for our intro because it kept getting stupid, like, I don't know, blocked. So I said, screw it, I'm going to change the music. I used the old intro because I couldn't find the video clip from the current, and I'll remake another one when I'm less lazy. Anyway, we've been doing the March Madness brackets for remakes, so we figured we'd do some remakes. We all made a list of 10 remake horror movie remakes, and we did one of our combined lists as we do. And so that's what we're doing tonight. And I got a special. Seth has 5. Here. Seth says, fuck these movies. So there's 5 of them. And we'll do that at the top. And I'm sure there are a couple of honorable mentions here and there. And we'll go ahead and go through all that. And let's get moving on what is kind of our top 10. I'm sure, well, no, I'm not sure. I know for sure that each of our top 10s are very different. So that's okay, because if we all thought the same thing, this would not be an interesting place to be. So I'll bring in the guys. First, we got Nate, because he's actually sitting at his chair, and Seth is not. So, Nate, how you doing today? How was your trip?
It was a blast.
Looked like it.
Beautiful.
Tons of pictures.
Huh?
You had tons of pictures.
I had tons of pictures because I don't like announce when I go on vacation online. So everybody's like, "Hey, I'm in this." I'm like, "No, I wait until after." But yeah, I went to southwest Colorado in the Rocky Mountains and saw some amazing stuff, and then went down to New Mexico. And basically, what drove me to New Mexico was my second favorite movie is No Country for Old Men. And that's where a bulk of it was shot. So, and Red Dawn, the original Red Dawn, was shot there.
Yeah.
So that's what drew me down there. And then just happenstance, Durango, where we are in Colorado, in the area, I didn't know that like some of National Lampoon's Vacation was shot there, and True Grit, and The Hateful Eight, and Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
Was it the newer True Grit?
That was the older one, the original, yeah. And even had the paddy wagon that John Wayne brings the outlaws in. It's pretty cool in the park outside. And as far as the remake, I think the remake was made not too far away from where it was, but I did see one location in Austin, Texas when I was there from the True Grit remake. But a lot of the True Grit remakes, it's stuff that was built just for the movie, so it's not there like a lot of those places. But the towns that the original True Grit was shot in that I visited, these are actually old silver mining towns and stuff. So they're buildings from the 1800s that are still there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Looks like you had a good time. Now, on our subject, are there any horror remakes that have disappointed you?
Disappointed me.
Yeah. I don't want to say hate, because I know you don't like to use that term.
Yeah, hate's a hard word. I don't know if I hate any remake. Of course, the Nightmare on Elm Street movie was disappointing because I had high hopes for it. I don't hate it, and I don't think it's an awful movie like a lot of people do. But, you have a property like that, it's like, I just saw the Crow remake, and it was as awful as everybody said it was. So that's a bad one. But I guess I wasn't disappointed because I kind of expected it to be. I didn't expect it to be as bad as, I was like, I don't know if I have anything nice to say about it. And I wasn't one of those people like, oh, fuck that movie, because I was like, hey, I'm going to give it a shot because I love The Crow and it's great material, and maybe they'll make it like O'Barr's book. And no, it's the Brandon Lee movie was not exactly like the book at all. This movie doesn't bear any resemblance to anything, so I don't know
really
why they even fucking called it The Crow. But
get people in the seats.
Yeah. Other disappointing remakes. Hmm. I can't think anything off the top of my head because I mean I don't always go into remakes with high hopes anyway. I
Yeah,
go in with a fair. I want to give them a fair shake.
yeah,
But I always, especially movies, it's just hard to replace movies that you love really a lot. You know, even though they can have things that are well done in them. Um, no, I can't think anything. I mean, there's movies that I was disappointed in myself for even wasting my money on, like The Fog, or
yeah,
uh, I think The Fog may be one of the worst I've ever seen. The
yeah.
Prom Night
I'm sure
remake's
Seth's
pretty
gonna
bad.
have a little bit to say about that. Yeah, I'm gonna introduce Seth, and I'm gonna go over a couple that I was because I go into remakes not with high hopes or anything like that, but like okay, let's see what they could have done differently. But here's Seth, our old friend, compadre, who does not, just despite popular belief, love the Fog 2005 remake. Seth, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, and I completely agree with Nate about The Crow. Uh,
I
I
didn't see
went
it, so
I went to the theaters to see it, and I was like, "This can't be any worse than Wicked Prayer, right?" Um, I don't know.
and it
Um,
was.
It was baffling how bad. I was like, what? They didn't do anything right in this movie. none,
the,
of this,
the,
none of this works. None of it works.
the last 20 minutes was cool, like the only action scene in the film. It seemed like.
Yeah,
But like everything up to that, like you couldn't believe into the relationship of Eric and Shelley at all, and it was just like all the characters were just super unlikable, and yeah, it was just it was bad. I think I'd actually rather rewatch The Crow Wicked Prayer.
me too.
That's rough. I've
Yeah,
never seen. I don't know. I think I've seen that one. I have very little. That's the one with Edward Furlong, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tara Reid and David Bryan. I saw it slightly, but I gave you a special little segment today. We'll get to that in a minute, and I'll just name a few that disappoint me. I'm not going to go into the Fog, but Amityville Horror. I love the original so much. I hated the remake. I did hate it. It made me so angry because it was so filled with bullshit, in my opinion. Where the old one wasn't exactly like a slow burn, but there was a lot of life to it. And I liked George in the original movie. I hated Ryan Reynolds in this one. It was Ryan Reynolds too.
I haven't seen
But
it since I saw it in the theaters.
it's not worth watching again. Honestly, I tried watching. Seth likes it a little bit. I tried watching it, and I think horror fans overall don't mind it, considering there are like 40 different Amityville movies, or with the name Amityville. But yeah, I couldn't get on board with it. I watched it a couple years ago, and I was like, oh, still, this is just not good to me.
yeah. I mean, I get your point of view, like because you're a fan of the original. Like I'm not so attached to the original at all, so like I didn't mind it. You know what I mean? Like I thought it was just okay as far as like an
Yeah,
Amityville movie. But if like maybe if I had that attachment to the original that you did, I'd probably be way more understanding.
Was it
yeah,
Chloe Grace Moretz in that? Is that one
yeah.
of her first
She
movie?
was in it,
Because I didn't know who she was in that time. I think
right?
there was a movie she did right before Hit Girl. Like, that I first like, oh, this girl's talent.
Yeah,
I can't remember what
she
it
has
was.
some
She
good
played
talent
like
for
the
sure.
middle sister or something.
I don't remember. But the other, I don't like a couple of bigger ones. The Halloween remake, you guys know how I'm not a big fan of that. But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I really do not like. I don't understand why people love it so much. I will never
I don't
understand why
understand
people
why
love
you
it
don't.
so much. Do what?
I don't understand why you don't like it so much. Like I mean, I'm not saying it's great. It's nothing's going to top the original, but I remember when I saw Texas Chainsaw 2004, 2003, whatever it was, that I kind of walked out saying, if this was an original movie, it might be one of my favorite horror movies of the year. I don't know. I
I
dug it.
don't. I think the reason there's reasons that I don't like are like it it took place in 1973 or whatever. It didn't feel like it. Everybody looked like because everybody in the early 2000s was dressing that way and looking the way that those kids look. There's only one scene in particular I liked. I didn't like the family as much because the three guys in the original were so much creepier than Arlie Ermy and the guy with no legs and all that. I just didn't like it. The only scene I liked was that scene with when the hitchhiker shoots herself in the head and the camera pulls out. That's about the only thing I liked about that movie. Otherwise, it's a and this makes me sound bad maybe, but it's an ad for Jessica. Like, how many different ways can we shoot Jessica Biel's ass and her body? And that's not a negative thing. I mean, she's quite an attractive woman. But like, it just, I don't know. I felt like a soulless remake, and people just love it. I don't like the portrayal of Leatherface almost at all compared to Gunnar Hansen's.
I don't like the Gunnar. I don't like Leatherface in it. Arlie Ermy. If Arlie Ermy wasn't in it, I don't know if I'd like it as much. I thought he was great.
He was great.
Yeah, he's always great.
I just don't care for it, and I try to watch it. It's just like Halloween. I try to watch it every year, and every year I'm like, no. Too soon, and it's been 22 years.
I don't watch it myself, though, I'd say.
Unsubscribe. No. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, don't forget to hit the like button. And right now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is going to go into the finals, probably against either Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead. It's really close. The remakes for the remake bracket. I'm gonna check real fast because it's Dawn of the Dead is winning 473 to 450, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre is beating The Hills Have Eyes by double. So, valiant effort. I do not think that it's better, but people said, I'm a crackhead because I think that Hills Have Eyes is better. Elm Street, I'm not mad at it anymore. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones I want to bitch about, but no, I think that's it. The Fog. But Seth has 5 that he says he sent me in the text. He's like, here's 5 that just fuck these movies. So that's what these 5 are. Seth says fuck these movies. So Seth, I'm gonna put them up and let you take over. So here's the first one.
Yeah. Okay. So. I'm not gonna lie here. I love the original Cabin Fever and all its un-PC glory. And this film, I think, does what a good remake should, which is try to do something different, not mimic the original. However, by doing it as a serious film, it just sucks all the fun right out of it. And all the characters are kind of indistinguishable from each other. I think the original film has a lot of personality.
Is Dennis in this?
Pancakes.
Yeah, I think there is a version of Dennis in this, but it's not like as extreme.
Didn't they use the same exact script?
Yeah,
they took the humor out of it.
They took the humor out of it. They kind of like cleaned it up to make it a little bit more PC, and this is like basically telling Cabin Fever as like a serious horror film, as opposed to the original, which was intentionally kind of juvenile by design. And so it just lacks all of the fun. I love the original. This is one where like I was like, oh, it can't be any worse than Cabin Fever Patient Zero, the third film. And this one just made that film look even better. So yeah, not a fan of Cabin Fever 2016 at all. The score is great though. The score is fantastic for it. I will say that.
Here's the next one.
Yeah, the 2008. I haven't seen it since I watched it for the first time, but I remember this movie just making me very angry. I thought it was just it's uncharacteristically it's not good as far as directing, and I like Steve Miner, but this film was just a miss.
Steve Miner did this?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And it was like, a couple years after Dawn of the Dead, and I think they tried to mimic the tone of the Dawn remake, but they just kind of fell flat on their face with this one.
How about this one?
Yeah, so this one is slightly more faithful to George Romero's film, but it's still just an awful movie. Just bad acting, bad dialogue. Um, you know, I bought this one blind. I have it on Blu-ray, and I watched it the one time, and I just thought it just wasn't a good movie. I applaud them for trying to kind of go back to certain things from the original while do their own thing with it. But it's another one that it's just bad all around. Children of the Corn 2009. I could not even finish this goddamn film. I may have turned it off like a half hour in. The characters are so insufferable, especially the wife. This movie it drove me nuts, and I've sat through a lot of the terrible Children of the Corn films, and this one,
Most of them are.
This a TV movie? I don't even know. I don't think I saw
yes,
this.
it was made for Sci-Fi Channel.
Okay, yeah, I never saw this.
Yeah, it's just, oh my god, I have it, but yeah, this is easily the worst Children of the Corn movie I've ever seen.
All right.
That says a lot.
I don't know. I got to see where I have it ranked because I don't have it ranked worst. I think Fields of Terror, which is the fifth one. I think that was the one I had ranked at the bottom. And of course, I saved the worst for last.
Yeah, The Fog. Probably, I was going to say probably the least offensive on this, but I don't think that's true. Yeah, this is just, I have a strong attachment to John Carpenter's original The Fog. I wrote an article on it on the horrorsyndicate.com where I explained how The Fog made me a John Carpenter fan, made me pay attention to his filmography pretty closely. It's my second favorite John Carpenter film. So as a fan of the original, this remake can go F itself with a cactus. It's just a lifeless remake.
Would you tell The Fog 2005 up yours with a twirling lawnmower?
I would.
Mm-hmm.
I would.
Me too. So,
it's a shame too because I like Tom Welling, but
I do. I like Tom Welling too. I don't remember who the actress is, but she was bad.
He was on Lost.
Was she?
Yeah.
She was hard to watch, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, she was okay. Yeah, as an actress, she wasn't anything like. I don't think she had much of a career. But yeah,
No.
I don't even remember. I just remember this movie was like, oh Jesus, this is nothing. This is awful. Like, because again, like you're talking about the Cabin Fever. I haven't seen the Cabin Fever remake. I love the original Cabin Fever too, and from what I remember, like The Fog has this great atmosphere and whimsical kind of vibe about it. And I don't think that's in this one, right? Like it's when they try to take stuff too serious. That's what really, again, we talked about it before. Nightmare on Elm Street. It kind of hurt it that it didn't have fun. It's just so when they try to make everything so dark, and I don't know if it's because of the time. When these movies were being remade, it was during the torture porn time. Hostel movies and the Saw movies and all that stuff. So I don't know if movies were saying, "Oh, the audiences want brutal, violent, grounded horror movies," and then so they started applying that to all this stuff, and it's like, but guys, like the slasher genre was popular because it was fun. We laughed, we partied watching them. You can't make them just depressing and bleak, and it just doesn't work. It worked for the torture porn, it worked for the French Extreme, the Martyrs movies and High Tension, which is just kind of a slasher. Inside's kind of a slasher, but I think because they're foreign films, they have a whole different vibe about them, as opposed to good old American slasher movie. It shouldn't be depressing and bleak. It should be fun, and it can be scary and all that. But I don't remember if I really was ever scared by Friday the 13th. I just remember enjoying the shit out of them,
Yeah.
And I guess that's where they were kind of losing it.
So before we get to the top 10 of all of them, Nate, are there some honorable mentions you want to throw out there? I know Seth has a couple as well.
I don't have my list in front of me. I do know one that didn't make it that I really love is the House of Wax, not the recent one, but the Vincent Price movie is a remake from 1953. I just fucking love that movie. It's one of my favorite Vincent Price movies, if not my favorite Vincent Price movie.
Classic.
It's so classic and charming, and the whole 3D. I'm not a big 3D fan, but it's kind of fun. You got Charles Bronson, and I mean, it's just a great classic. It's one of my favorite horror movies of the 50s, and I just think it's one of the better horror remakes. Do you have my list with you, or I know it's in
It's on Facebook. I'll look it up real fast. I think House of Wax is one of the few I've seen from the 50s.
I think I put in Let Me In, the remake of
Let Me In was number 11 on your list.
Let Me In. I mean, I love the original, and I don't think it's better than the original, but I think it's pretty goddamn close. Reeves is a really great filmmaker, and
yeah, it's really good.
I think that remake is really strong. It's got its own thing. It's got some really good filmmaking in it. There's the Suspiria remake. I know people are on the fence about that, but I actually kind of like it more than Dario Argento's movie. I know it's blasphemy. But I really love that remake.
But it's good. It's different. It's one of those that you wouldn't know it's a remake if you weren't told, if it didn't have that same title,
Yeah, I like that he didn't just copy Argento. He could have totally tried to make it hit, like with the lighting and everything. But he just took the plot and made this very a good film. Evil Dead. I don't think made our list.
Not a remake.
Yeah, it's not a remake technically. People call it a remake.
But Alvarez says it's not a remake, so yeah. I trust what he says. I looked at this, I was like, Nate? I was like, Nate?
Well, I didn't want to leave it off because some people debate on it.
The populace believes it as a remake, yeah.
I know it's supposed to be in the same universe because the fucking Oldsmobile's there. So what else is
you got The Invisible Man.
The Invisible Man. I'll leave it at that. Yeah. I think The Invisible Man is one that I think it's phenomenal. I really think that was one of the best.
2020 movie, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was smart and stylized. Moss is a great actress. Has some really clever stuff in it. I think that's a super remake. Like it does. I mean, it's not really that resembling of the original movie at all, but I kind of dig that. I kind of like. I didn't hate the new Wolfman movie. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I like that they did something new. Like they took the mythos and they tried. They're not just telling those stories. So it's kind of like they aren't remakes, but they're like, let's create new stories around these monsters, and let's be spontaneous with it or creative with it. And but the Wolfman's kind of forgettable. The Invisible Man, I think, should be a modern classic.
Let me ask this question: if the Wolfman 2025 was not called the Wolfman and it was just a werewolf movie, would we have such an expectation for it?
I think it would have been better received.
Yeah, I do too.
Because
Mr. Werewolf expert, I need to know what Seth thinks as well, because he's the werewolf guy here.
It's the problem with quite a few films I've seen lately. So I could say the same thing about Child's Play 2019 or Wrong Turn 2021. Two films that could have been their own original IPs. They would have been so much better received. I mean, one of mine.
I love
the Child's Play 2019. Like, it's like I was watching it and I'm like half of me, like the half that's the Child's Play fan hates it, but there's another half of me that's like, this is actually a really good movie, and it could have easily been its own thing. And then I have that same feeling about Wrong Turn 2021. Like
Okay.
the people have that expectation of the mountain men up there, and it's different, and it's its own thing. It should have been called The Foundation. Like it
Mhm.
should have been called Wrong Turn. It should have been promoted as from the creator of Wrong Turn. So Wolfman, and I mean, we could even say the same thing about The Invisible Man, but I think it's a great film as it is. But like again, those are films that are just they're in name only, and I feel like it's almost a disservice to them to take on the brand name and have that expectations when they're actually really good films that probably could have a better reaction had they been um, had they existed as their own original IP. That's
Mm.
my long-winded response.
I think you got a good point, honestly, because I agree, and I think I heard Nate say that the Wrong Turn 2021 movie was way better. I think it's better than all the other Wrong Turn
I
movies, just like
I,
Sean said.
I think I liked it more than the original.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I don't know. I think you're right, Seth. And I think a part of it is maybe the studio. I don't know. Well, if I watch the Wolfman movie and take out what I think of like Lawrence Talbot and all that stuff out of the equation and look at it as a werewolf movie, it actually isn't bad that way. You know what I mean? And it is
Right.
my number 3 movie of the year so far, but I've seen 3 horror movies for this year, so.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the thing too, because like if it was its own individual werewolf movie, it would have been fine with. I think. I mean, design wise, I wouldn't have cared for the design as much, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't be extremely harsh on it if it wasn't called Wolfman, because I mean, it does create its own lore about the werewolves, being this animal based disease that affects people. Um, but yeah,
So,
Oh,
I think
did did it make our list?
no, it
No,
didn't.
I think
You we
it's a
so the problem was you had, let's see, one, two, three, 4 movies that weren't on our lists that kind of pushed them back. And I
yeah.
think it was, where did it go? It was number 13. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I think
I
it's
didn't even think about it as a remake
um,
because yeah, there's so many fucking possible rules, like, because the 1990 movie is a mini series, but most of us look at it as a movie now. So I didn't even think about it. So
to be honest with you,
yeah,
when I created my list, I was just kind of going off memory, so there's a lot that I forgot, including the '50s House of Wax movie, which I love.
I
That would have made my list had I remembered it.
yeah. For the Wolfman 2010, there you go, Seth. Yeah, 2017 was awesome. Flat out. It made, I think it's one of the top grossing horror movies of all time, if I'm not mistaken. Am I
at the
right
time I
on
think it was
that?
the highest grossing horror movie ever, if I remember right. And it's so good. It like did it predate Stranger Things?
No, it was a year after.
It came out, but they were probably making it when Stranger Things debuted.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, you can't say it copied Stranger Things because it's based on the book that came out in the '80s. So
right.
it's like they just said it in the '80s because time wise that made more sense.
And Finn Wolfhard's in both. That
Yeah.
draws
Um,
comparisons.
but yeah, it was just so well done. Sadly, the sequel wasn't, but
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But the kids stuff, for I
I think
think
kids
our generation especially, it was 1989.
yeah.
And seeing the Nightmare on Elm Street 5 on the marquee and Batman and all that stuff was really awesome.
I mean, to be fair, the 1990 miniseries loses steam once they're adults. So
Yeah,
the kids stuff was far more interesting in both versions.
I mean, it's kind of like that in the book too. for me.
Yeah,
Well, there you go.
not enough
I
gangbang.
think. What'd you say? Oh, yeah. Anyway, we're gonna get into the top 10 that we have on our list. I think, unless you want to mention, Little Shop of Horrors was another one.
It didn't make the list. I thought it did.
Mm-mm. It was number 17. Me and Seth didn't have it on our list, and Jared didn't have it at all, or didn't
Yeah,
do a
one of
list.
those ones that you don't think of as a horror movie, but it totally is.
It's
And
got it in the title.
it's so fucking great. It's such a good.
I forget that it's a remake too, though.
Great.
I'll be honest.
It's a great. What's that?
I forget that it's a remake.
Yeah, I mean the Roger Corman one. I mean it original wasn't a musical, you know, but it's a really good musical too. It's got a phenomenal cast. It's just a fun movie.
It's not on the list. You can jump out the window now. Friday the 13th remake didn't make the list. I didn't make any of our lists, actually. And just to address that, I like the Friday the 13th remake overall.
I do too.
It
Yeah,
just,
Same here.
yeah.
I think it's better than
didn't
half
make
the
the list.
franchise.
Yeah, it's about. Yeah, I usually have about 6 or 7 or 5, somewhere in the 5, 6, 7 range when I
It's
rank the
about where I got it.
franchise.
7 something.
Yeah, so it's not that we don't like it. It's just it didn't make the list. There's
We like others
10 other
more.
movies. Yeah. Yeah. See ya. Good luck.
Please don't jump out the window.
No.
It's our opinion is not worth it.
Oh, really? Favorite of the franchise? I like it. It's not bad. It's. I think it's the best. Yeah, of the 3 main remakes. Nate. You might. I don't know. Actually, you guys.
I
if you
like
had to
the
pick one
Halloween
for free,
remake out of those.
the Halloween remake. Seth, what about you?
I would go with Friday 13th. I think that's a
Me too.
super fun movie. It's a stupendous movie.
It's just a bro.
Absolutely. All right. So starting off our top 10 then, and this one will make Seth very happy, is the 2010 Wolfman just sneaking in by the hair of his whiskers, I guess. It just barely beat out Bram Stoker's Dracula.
There's one. Bram Stoker's Dracula. That deserves an honorable mention.
We're going to talk about Dracula.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Seth. What do you got on this one? Tell us why you love this so much, and we will chime in.
Well, I was kind of hoping you guys would talk about this one because I've talked about this one a lot.
You've never even mentioned this movie.
I know, it's weird.
Not once.
I absolutely adore this film. I've been an avid defender for a very long time. I think it does what a good remake should do. It takes the basics of the original and then it does its own thing. It has its own identity, and they do that by switching the relationship between Larry Talbot and his father. And instead of the warm relationship, it's the cold and distant one. And I think that works for this film. I love Rick Baker's makeup effects. I love Danny Elfman's score. Yes, it's got some bad CGI for the transformations, but that doesn't bother me at all. This movie, I think, is underrated. So I know I talk about this one a lot, so I want to hear what you guys have to say about it.
I love the tone of this movie. I love the werewolf design. The cast is phenomenal. Hugo Weaving is so good in this movie, but when is he not? And Benicio del Toro is great. I love that whenever they take him back to London and they're doing all those tests and shit, and when he breaks free, it's like, God, this is just what I want to see in a movie like this. I actually prefer this over the 1941 movie, and this was actually higher on my list too after rewatching it not too long ago. Nate, what about you? What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I liked it a whole lot more when I rewatched it for whatever episode we did it. I know we talked about it before, and I revisited the movie. I didn't hate the movie when it came out. I think it was more of that what your expectations are. But I always loved the look of it. But watching it again, I was like, why did I not love this? Like I'm watching it, I'm like, and like especially like the first thing I think of is that I guess it's the first attack where he's just going through like the village or a party or something, just like whatever it was,
Yeah.
and he's like ripping people apart, like he's just like on the loose, like it's very like you see him and he dashes and he disappears, and you see his, and I'm like, this is like I don't know if I've ever seen this in a werewolf movie, and this is fucking cool. It was kind of like when I saw, it gave me the same vibes when I saw Batman Begins, and the first time Batman shows up and is taking
in the
train
on the docks or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's fucking Batman, So it's kind of like that's the kind of shit he was doing. I didn't see the Michael Keaton doing that, or Val Kilmer, but this was what Batman's supposed to be doing in movies. And so, a horror figure. He's supposed to scare the shit out of these people. And so when I saw the Wolfman running roughshod through this place, just fucking ripping people's throats off, and all this, thing,
That's what you want to see with a werewolf, right?
That's what I was like. This is like why was I not in love with this? This is exactly what I always dreamed of a werewolf movie being, and because of course they weren't doing that in the 40s,
right?
And everything and all the and again, we don't usually see like people been afraid to do wolf men like this, like on legs like a human, not bipedal or not four-legged or whatever, like the classic wolf man,
And he looked great. I thought he did
amazing. Yeah, so it's an awesome drawing. I actually was like thinking I never drawn this version.
You need to.
It's a great fucking design.
Seth will buy it from you.
I really honestly think the thing that probably knocked it for me was that Rick Baker was fucked over with all that CGI shit. And then there was so much CGI that I think through that I was like, why? It's so beautiful. It's kind of like, I felt the same way. I know you guys really liked it, but that last voyage of the Demeter, I was so excited about that movie because the makeup looked phenomenal. And I'm like, the vibe about that, the atmosphere of the movie. And then there was so much CG that I just went, why did you fucking ruin it?
I know you get that groan when you see that CG. It's like, ugh, seriously.
It looked so good.
Yeah.
You get Doug Jones. Was it Doug Jones or was it Javier Botet? I can't remember.
Was it Botet?
Botet. You get this great actor, you get this amazing makeup, and then you just throw all this CG shit in that doesn't need to be there. And I remember that's how I felt with this. Like Benicio looks so fucking cool.
He does.
And like, why did I get it? Like, there's some things that you can't physically do, but I mean, and some of this stuff that I'm talking about, it's exciting, would have to be CG, but some of it, like the transformation, like you don't trust Rick Baker to do it successfully. Let Rick do his stuff. And I think my big problem with CGI is that it just keeps progressing. So every year goes by, it gets worse looking and worse looking and worse looking. Whereas practical, if it's done well, like no one watches American Werewolf in London today and says, "Oh, that looks like shit." Some people may think it doesn't look, incredible as we did then, but they just
they're nuts. That's the case. It still looks incredible.
It's still there in camera. Yeah. It's still tangible. It's not obviously fake, and that's what CGI does. After a certain amount of time, it's like going back and playing a Super Nintendo game. In 1990, it looked amazing. Now you're like, right. Damn, we thought that was good. It just doesn't hold up because it keeps progressing and getting better and better and better and better. So I think CGI should be used very minimalist when it comes to stuff like this. Don't rely on it.
And Ages of Film, do you know that Seth does a werewolf show every Wednesday? Just in case you didn't know, Werewolf Wednesday every Wednesday with Seth.
Other than that, I think the movie's phenomenal. I think that's what really bothered me then was the CG.
And shout out to the director's cut. It does make it a little bit better for those who have a problem with it. And Seth's the one that turned me. I don't want to say he turned me on, but He turned me on to it.
I don't know if I've seen that or not. I haven't very you know if I own the movie. How many copies you got, Seth? You need.
Right. You make a trade. You do some art. He'll get you a copy of the Wolfman. How about that? But yeah, I do enjoy the movie. It made my list and made Seth's list. And which one are you doing this Wednesday, Seth?
Another Wolf Cup.
Uh-oh. Shit. So coming in at number 9 on our list, Nate, sit back down because this is one of your favorites of last year, the Nosferatu 2024.
I do have the unrated director's cut.
If you haven't watched that, check it out because it makes it a little bit better.
All right.
But let's talk about Nosferatu a little bit. Seth wasn't completely hot on this one. You and I out of the theater were like, damn, this was a great movie. And it was.
Yeah, it's hard to top it over Herzog's remake because I love Herzog's remake.
Ditto.
But I think I went back and watched Herzog's after seeing Egger's new one, and I'm like, I think I'm a little comfortable in saying this one's better. And I think it's first of all, I'm a huge Eggers fan, and I'm not saying Seth isn't or anything like that. I'm just saying that there's a little bias there, even though I like Herzog as well too. I'm a fan of his work. But there was something I just like being in the hands of a really phenomenal visual storyteller and someone who is so tuned into actual folklore and history, who gets off on it. You know, he gets off on history and being accurate and doing incredible research and doing every little thing on set, won't even be seen on camera, but it's there because it's that important to him. And I think you see that in all 4 films he's made. And I have he comes from art directing. You know, he's an artist. That's where he started. And I think it pours over into his films. There's some things about the movie I don't love. I think I brought it up. Like the makeup on him is phenomenal in this, but because of the moonlight that they created, it almost looks like CG. I don't think the light did the makeup any favors. It doesn't light him well, in my opinion. But going back to the lighting, I love that he was accurate in that period's type of lighting, where it's very dark. It's a very dark world where everything's candlelit or moonlit, literally, to the point where sometimes it's too dark. And even listen to his commentary, he was even saying like, "Oh, we had too much smoke in that room, or we did this." You know, some things are getting lost. And only other problem I had with the movie was it isn't very wide. There's a lot of close-up stuff. Camera's almost way up in people's faces, or everything's compacted. But other than that, I love the things he brought to it. I appreciate the fact that he's been wanting to make this since he was 9 years old. That we may have Robert Eggers because of the original Nosferatu and his obsession with it. And so there's something when you get somebody who is really in love with this material, and this is like his dream movie. And I don't know, like it was one of those movies where I just kept thinking about it. I kept wanting to see it again immediately. And I think I waited like maybe 3 days before I did. So
yeah, if not for the substance, this would have been my number 1 last year.
Yeah, and the substance was not a bad movie at all. I like the substance. Body horror, I'm not a big body horror guy, but the fact that I'm not a body horror guy, and I think it's probably easily top 5 horror movies of the last year, just because it's so good that it's it doesn't matter that it's not my genre. But I guess also I Gothic horror doesn't seem to have a place in today's pop culture. It's struggled. You know, Del Toro tried to make Crimson Peak, 10 years ago, and thinking he could resurrect. I liked it too, and it failed, and I was like, it pissed me off. But he was trying to resurrect the old dark house horror movies, and people just weren't on board for it. So I love that there's a guy who's making gothic horror movies like The Witch and Lighthouse that are finding an audience, that are finding appreciation. Where right now we're in a, they just had Horror Hound Weekend, like 60% of the guest list were Terrifier cast and crew. It's like okay, Terrifier's fun and all, but like I like good movies too. Nosferatu is a good movie, so.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, Nosferatu was great, and the gothic horror is some of my favorite horror, and this was great to see on the big screen, and with just a wonderful cast. I, unlike Seth, don't mind Lily Rose Depp. Seth just tosses us in the trash bin because of her. Isn't that right, Seth?
Oh, I mean, I could go the rest of my life without seeing another close up of her face, but
you fucking yoga hoser.
I mean, to be completely fair, though, I mean, I was sick when I went to go see this in the theater, and I did walk away thinking that it was probably the most beautifully shot horror film of the year. And I have rediscovered the soundtrack, the score for it. I've been listening to that a lot lately. The score for this movie is actually incredible. So I am due for a rewatch of this. I prefer,
it's on Peacock.
As of right now, I prefer the 1979 film. However, I think when I watched this, I had maybe an expectation for it because it was Eggers, and I loved, especially following up The Northman, which is a film that I love that a lot of people don't seem to love. I don't know. I guess I just had a higher expectation for this, but I need to rewatch it because I was sick.
Yeah, I need to rewatch the '79 version because I didn't care for it when I first saw it. The performance by Klaus Kinski is phenomenal, but I also wasn't a big fan going into that one after because I'm the 1922 film is a silent film, and I have trouble with silent films keeping my attention. But I definitely need to revisit. I might have a whole Nosferatu weekend and watch all three of them. That's kind of a thing I want to do at some point because what is that, Nate? A thumbs up?
I don't know
where'd that come from. Did you see that, Seth?
Yeah, I saw that. That's weird.
Oh, okay. I don't know what that means. Is it because you? Is that why? Is it? I don't know what just happened.
Do that.
No, but you were doing this, and maybe that read it as a thumbs up. Oh. I don't know. AI, it's gonna get us all.
There it is. Oh, it is. Word bubble. I guess it is doing it.
That's weird. Okay, but what doesn't happen for me? What about this? What? All right. Number 8 on our countdown of our favorite remakes is The Hills Have Eyes. We're in a rare situation with The Hills Have Eyes. It's better than the original, right? We're all in agreement on that, right?
100%. This was my favorite horror remake.
Your favorite?
This is my very favorite horror remake. Yeah, I didn't have it number 1 on my list because I was voting on I was trying to vote not personal. I don't think this is the best horror remake. I just think it's my favorite because High Tension reignited my love of horror when I saw it. I still watched horror, but I had kind of gotten tired of where the genre was. There wasn't a lot that was exciting me. The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, and a few in there in that late 90s, early 2000s era. And 28 Days Later came out, and that kind of started it a little bit. And then I saw High Tension, and I was like, oh man, I'm so excited about horror again. And so I was a big Alexander Aja. And so when I found out he was remaking The Hills Have Eyes, which I never like, was not a fan of the original Wes Craven movie. It just was never one of my very favorite movies. And so, and there was enough that he did with this one that I think the only thing that this movie, that the original has over this one, is that Papa Jupe was better in the original because he actually had presence and a place in the script where in the movie, whereas was it Drago? Is that his name? The guy played Frank Nitti.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he doesn't really have much to do in this movie. But the thing that, to me, the thing that pushes this one over is somehow, my God, somehow he made that home invasion of the trailer more intense and more disturbing than the original, because the original is pretty fucking disturbing. I think the whole breastfeeding of the mother was like, whoa, fuck, and then like the last gasp that she has, that jump scare was fucked up. But to me, when I think of this movie, my love for it is that he turned Doug's third act story into a spaghetti western, where he goes out to get his baby back, and it's so, again, spaghetti western. It feels like it. I mean, it, even the music kind of has a little Ennio Morricone vibe to it a bit in those moments, and just the hell that he goes through and facing these mutants by himself to get his baby back. I just fucking love it. I love everything about it. So I totally love this one more than Wes Craven, and I'm a Wes Craven fanatic. And
he's your dad or your mom.
He outdid him, and even Wes Craven said it. He says better than my movie. So I know he was producer, and it in his favor to say that, to get asses in seats, but it was.
I didn't like the remake of The Last House on the Left. Seth, what about you? What are your thoughts on The Last House on The Hills Have Eyes?
I'm pretty much in the same boat as Nate. So I mean, I even like the Last House on the Left remake better than the original as well. I like Wes Craven overall, but the original Hills of Eyes is good, but I never overly loved it. This remake, I think, is just a huge improvement on the original, and the thing that really helps it is how they improved upon the Doug character. He was pretty much nothing in the original, and in this, like, that whole third act fight is just, it's incredible. It's bloody, it's great, it's awesome. So I dig this movie way more than the original.
He's got that Straw Dogs homage in the third act where Doug picks up his broken glasses out of the blood. And then, like, the other thing I didn't mention was Aja, the genius of making it a bomb testing site, like one of those old villages, little towns, 50s towns or whatever, or 40s towns, I guess. But the reason he did that was because he wanted to create suspense and tension. And because you're out in the open desert, there's no way to do what you could do when you're wondering what's around that corner in the house, or what's around that car, or what's around that. So he put that town in there, and that whole radiation bomb testing mutant thing, to create better tension and more suspense in the storytelling and the camera movements and things. So,
and it worked. Really well. Yeah. It's a good movie. I saw that, actually. It's funny you brought up High Tension, because I actually rented this and High Tension on the same day and watched them both on the same day.
Well, a good day in your life.
It was actually. It was because I went out and bought them almost immediately after I watched them. So, and I got fooled into watching The Hills Have Eyes 2, the sequel to it.
That one had a good opening, right? And they have like the attack in the with the guy.
The opening wasn't bad. The rest of it's not very good.
Rest
It's pretty
of it,
forgettable.
yeah, I don't even remember the rest of it.
Right. But coming in at number 7, Frankenstein.
Yeah, this is one people don't think about, but
No.
the reason I put this at my number 1 because I think it is the best movie in the list, but also, you know, I don't think it's a remake really, but I have to include it because so many people will call a movie a remake, even if it was based on a book on a previous. So if you're, to me, I think it's just a new adaptation. It's not a remake. If I'm telling the story from a book or a novel, it's my interpretation of that. And so, whereas, Eggers, even though Nosferatu's based on Dracula, he was inspired more by, he's clearly inspired by Murnau's movie, not just Bram Stoker's novel, more of Murnau's movie than other. But this doesn't resemble the Thomas Edison Frankenstein movie from 1910, but that did come first. See, people don't think about, they want to shit on remakes, but it's like so many silent films were remade. The Hills Have, I just said The House of Wax, one of my mentioned, or I don't think the original was a silent film, but there were so many movies, like even like
it was 1919, The House of Wax, so I think it was, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess it was silent. It's been a while since I saw it. But so many movies from the silent era were remade in the 30s and 40s. The Cat and the Canary and things like that. There were so many Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movies that were made. There were, they would retouch on, these were all based on classic novels too. A lot of them were. So, The Hands of Orlok remade in as Mad Love with Peter Lorre. And so Frankenstein, if you're going by that, if you're going to call the 2017 It a remake, if you want to call Bram Stoker's Dracula a remake, then Frankenstein 1931 has to be put into that category because there was a Frankenstein movie made before this for James Whale's movie. And this is, to me, one of the, if we're being inclusive, Frankenstein should be in the top 10 of greatest horror films ever made. Most iconic.
Yes, I agree with that. Yep.
I think Bride, I like Bride better.
I do too, but I think Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I just think Frankenstein, if you just take Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, put them together, it's the greatest horror movies of the 1930s, of the Universal era.
Mm-hmm.
They're perfect. The cast is perfect. The makeup on Boris Karloff was perfect. Everything about just iconic as fuck. And they made, Karloff starred in 3 really strong Frankenstein movies. Colin Clive was a great Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah,
all the little the Igors and the Dwight Fry and Bela Lugosi and Fritz and all that, they're just that's just so great. And I think if technically it's a remake, if you're going by the rules that everybody has, if it's a movie based on the same thing, it's a remake. I tend to think, our number 1 on this list is a remake, but it's not. It's based on a book.
Yeah, who goes there?
Yeah, so
I don't spoil it.
You just spoiled it, but
yeah.
But the bottom line is, if we're going to include that one, then we have to include Frankenstein because it's the same scenario, same case. That's based on the book. So there was a movie that came out before it based on that book.
So anybody who doesn't know, in 1910, Thomas Edison's company, Thomas Edison, produced it. There was a 12-minute movie, and it's available on YouTube. Nate sent me the link. I was completely oblivious to it until, I guess, yesterday. It's definitely worth watching. It's available on YouTube to watch for free. and I believe some of it was missing, or it was one of those
Lost.
what like London at Midnight. What do they call it? Lost films at some point, and there were only some stills available, but. It's a silent film from 1910. It's about 12 minutes, a little bit over 12 minutes long. Definitely worth watching. Seth, did you get a chance to watch that? But I sent you the link.
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed until you sent me the link.
Same here. Yeah, because when Nate put Frankenstein, I'm like, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty cool.
It's cool to see stuff like that. It's like HBO. If you look at their horror section, the Infernal Cauldron from 1903 is on there. It's only like 3 minutes long, but it's a must watch in my opinion. If you guys have never seen that, I'd like to see a remake of that because I think that could be a cool movie. Honestly, if you Infernal Cauldron, if you haven't seen it. But yeah, I love Frankenstein 1931. Of course, my favorite of the series is Son of Frankenstein. But yeah, top 10 horror movies of all time. I don't think I can say no to that. Seth, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I'm absolutely in agreement with all of that. I mean, really, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and Son of Frankenstein, they were all from the 30s, right? Son of Frankenstein was like 39.
39, yeah.
Yeah. The Frankenstein franchise is like the strongest of the old Universal monster films. But yeah, I didn't even think of it until this whole list thing. But I mean, it could easily be number one.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't put on my list. If we redid the list after knowing the stuff, because the list was done yesterday, because I had mine done before you guys even did yours, and I don't know that this list is. Maybe I should have redone mine and yours. Anyway, because there's other movies that like Curse of Frankenstein is so damn good, and I didn't add Bram Stoker's Dracula because when I was thinking about Dracula, this is why I wanted to talk about Dracula for a minute. Is I'm like, there are so many fucking Dracula movies out there. Like, which one are we remaking? And I prefer Horror of Dracula versus Bram Stoker's Dracula. But I love Dracula movies in general, so it's like. I don't know. I just left Dracula completely to its own devices. And then you had on your list, I'm like, shit, maybe I should put that on there. And I didn't. So, but I do think there are more Dracula movies than anything else out there ever. I mean, other than like just werewolf movies or genre movies, but with that character.
Dracula's up there in like the most used. I think the character that's been used most in film is Sherlock Holmes, if I remember right.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, The Invisible Man, the original one's great. The Universal movies in general are awesome.
Anything made by James Wells, fucking phenomenal. Like,
yeah. Have we've done Universal stuff, haven't we? I think we have.
We did a whole thing on Universal.
I thought so. All right, so let's go to number 6 on our list, and by a tight margin, the 1990 Night of the Living Dead came in, and I love this movie very much. So it was very high on my list. Tony Todd and Patricia Tallman alone, then Tom Towles just put in great performances. Tom Savini's only directorial film. I love it. I think I've said that a lot over the years. I've seen this one. I saw this one before I saw the original too, so I do prefer it over the original. I'm in the minority here, I think. Am I wrong? Seth, I know you love the original more than this, but
right.
I don't know if I saw this one first. Honestly, I was, it's possible. I too. I just fucking love this movie. I remember the first time I saw it. I remember the atmosphere of it. I love it. I love the music or the strange soundtrack that it had. That whole opening with the moon and there was just something about I just remember being totally invested in the movie, like and completely there with them. It really transported me, and I guess because it was in color and could have been 1990, not 1968.
right.
When I watched the original, and I prefer the original now, in hindsight. I think the original is just one of the most important not just one of the most important horror films, one of the most important films. Like it was just something independent, completely independent, um, and it's just so for its time, it's just so alarming and powerful. And but I just remember being really, really invested in this movie the first time I saw it, and like the whole. And yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say anything about Judith in the original, but I love I think most people do love the turn of Barbara in this, with Patricia Tallman becoming a fighter as opposed to basically an invalid almost.
Yeah.
It's Johnny. But and Tony Todd. I mean, Tony.
Couldn't you have recast that role better, in my opinion? By the way.
Yeah, like we in the horror genre love Tony, and I think, and if I'm being honest, this is my favorite Tony Todd movie or role. I think Candyman's phenomenal. It's an amazing movie, but I don't think Tony Todd necessarily makes that movie as great as it is. But I think Tony Todd.
That's a good point.
Makes this movie. Like, I mean, Patricia's great, but I think he's got such great presence, and it's really a showcase of how good Tony Todd could be, as opposed to almost all other movies I've seen him in. Like, when I think of him, I think of Candyman and The Crow and this, probably, and maybe Platoon. He's got a small part in Platoon. And then The Crow is a small part. There's not a lot there. But when it comes down to it, it's Candyman and this. And I think he stands out a lot more in this. He has a lot more to do. He's got to carry the movie, really.
He's the lead. I mean, without a doubt, in this movie.
Man, he's great. I mean, and Tom Toll is an underrated actor. I'm not. If I had to knock it at all, I'm not a big fan of the Hillbilly Kids. So what's the name of the
Judy Lynn or whatever, and Tommy or something like that. Yeah,
I felt they were really hamming it up, and they were very. They felt phony to me. Like the actor, I don't know his name, but I know he was in like Leatherface. Yeah. I liked him in that. But I'm like, is this guy Southern at all? He felt like a California guy trying to be a Southern guy or something.
Yeah, I don't think he's a Southern at all.
Yeah, I don't think he was Southern. So it felt like a phony Southern accent to me, and I don't know. When I watch it, I kind of cringe with him. But other than that, the zombies looked amazing. Some of the best looking zombies. Yeah. Really good gags in it.
When your director's Tom Savini,
And it was genuinely scary. It was a very scary movie to me when I saw it. And talk about Tom Savini. My friend. This is my friend's favorite movie, Sean, who was on. I think he did a show. Did he do a show? Sean Dolphin. I can't remember if he came on the show or not. But this is his favorite movie, and I told the story, I think, on the show before, where when I met Tony Todd, Sean was battling cancer, and he couldn't make it. He couldn't go to Scarefest to meet Tony. And so I went up to Tony, and I gave him some artwork, and he offered me an autograph, free autograph or whatever. And I said, I really appreciate that, but I have a friend whose favorite movie is this movie, and you're like God to him, and he wanted to be here, but he's battling cancer. Would you say hello to him on the phone, And Tony's like, yeah, give me your phone. And Tony, we called him, and Tony actually left the booth for like almost 10 minutes and had a conversation with Sean, telling him, you're going to get through this, man. Just hang in there, buddy. Be strong. He goes, but you're going to beat this. And, that was amazing for me, Tony Todd.
That's awesome.
And so, that alone makes me have a special place for this movie, but I already loved it anyway. But when I think about what Tony did, he didn't just sit there and say, hey, how you doing? It's Tony Todd. And he went and had a personal conversation away from everybody with this guy he never met, And
yeah, that probably meant the world to him.
Yeah. Oh, it did. Like his wife answered the phone. Sean was sleeping, and she said, he's like, who is this? Like, Tony Todd. So she's like waking him up. Tony Todd's on the phone. He's like, what? So they called me afterwards and told me like, oh man, because that was just crazy. They just couldn't imagine.
It would be crazy to wake up to Tony Todd's beautiful voice.
Tony Todd calling you. But yeah, really good dude. And he talked about, I'll bring that up. We talked about The Crow earlier. When I met Tony and when I met Ernie Hudson, all when I mentioned The Crow, they just lit up and would just praise Brandon Lee so much. They just said this guy was such a beautiful person, wonderful, wonderful man. And they wouldn't even talk about Ghostbusters or anything like that. It was like they just kept talking about Brandon Lee and how great he was, and how sad it was. So
that's my son sent me a picture of. I'll have to send it to you guys of Ernie Hudson bent over at his booth, and there's a picture of him in the background. It looks like he's
I've seen that.
Himself in blood. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
He sent that to me earlier today. I'm like, oh my god. So anyway, Seth, what about you on this one? I think you had this ranked highly or higher on your list.
Yeah, I mean, I dig this remake. I prefer the original. The original Night of the Living Dead is my second favorite horror film. But I think this remake is pretty damn good. Again, like you guys were talking about with the cast, Tony Todd is, of course, he's great in everything. Anytime he shows up, he's just great in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as much as I love the original and I understand Barbara's character in the original as being, that's the way certain people would react to that situation, kind of going into a state of shock. I definitely prefer this version of Barbara, where they kind of toughened her up and gave her a shotgun. So, yeah, I dig this film. I think it's a damn good remake. I love the original more, but this is really damn good.
Yeah, agreed. And right above this is Dawn of the Dead, another Romero remake. And I love this movie, like unconditionally love this movie. I was very nervous about seeing this in the theater when it came out in 2004 because of my love for the 1978 Romero film that we all love, and the disappointment of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, because remakes were starting to really come about in that early 2000s. But I love this. Went and saw it like 4 times because I liked it so much, and to this day, it's almost like a comfort movie to me. It's just great cast, great fun. If not taking place in a mall and called Dawn of the Dead, it would not be a remake. It's that's separate. And James Gunn and Zack Snyder working together. Hopefully, the last time they don't work together again in DC, if you know what I mean. But I like this movie quite a bit. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think this was one that when it came out, when they were announcing it, I was like, "Fuck you! You can't remake Dawn of the Dead." Dawn of the Dead's one of my top 10 horror movies. So like, I was kind of reluctant about it, and when I saw it, it was just so exciting. And that opening 10 minutes is maybe arguably one of the top 10 opening minutes of any horror movie ever made.
Ah, that's awesome.
And I did really love it. I really liked it. Zack Snyder had such a established style. There was just something about the choices he made in the action. I haven't loved everything Zack's done. There's a lot of the DC stuff I didn't love. But the thing about Zack that always stands is the guy knows how to move a camera. He really knows how to film action, in my opinion. I don't know about the DC stuff, but when I saw even like Sucker Punch, when people were shit on Sucker Punch, I remember I was at Horror Hound when that came out, and I wanted to go see it, and everyone was talking how shitty it was. And then when I passed, and then I saw it on VHS and or video, and I'm like, fuck, I should have went and saw this because yeah, it's not like the most amazing story or anything, but it's visually very stunning, and the movements and the editing and things were really phenomenal. And like I think did he make that after Watchmen? Because Watchmen's like one of my favorite fucking comic book movies.
No, Sucker Punch I think was 07.
Okay, so my favorite movie he's done is Watchmen, but this is probably my second favorite that he's done. And
No, actually, you're right. Sucker Punch came out in 11. Sorry, it's
okay.
right before Man of Steel, not Watchmen.
But yeah, Dawn of the Dead. My only, whenever I talk about why I still prefer the original, and my only problem with Dawn of the Dead remake, even again, I love it. It's amazing soundtrack. I think what hurts it for me, and the reason I don't go back to it, is the thing that was so strong about the first movie, the original movie, was that it takes place over a long period of time, and it feels like it takes like you're there for a long time with these four people, just four people that you really start to grow attached to. And when one of them dies, it's tragic. When when Roger dies, I was heartbroken when he got bit. I was as much as a shithead that Flyboy is when he got killed, I was sad. I remember feeling that way. So in this movie, I never felt that way about anybody in this movie because we're with them so fast and there's so many of them and they just keep adding and adding and adding and adding that to me it's like there's almost overkill with. But I got it. I understand it because this is a different beast. These zombies are fast and vicious and 28 days later zombies, like that. So you can't go slow when the zombies are moving that fast. So it makes sense that there's got to be more carnage and more speed. And Zack Snyder's not that type of filmmaker. I can't see Zack Snyder making a slow moving film. So it has, James Gunn's sense of humor and his aesthetic as well. I thought they were a good marriage together. Because really, like Zack Snyder's not a horrible writer, but I think he probably would make better movies with a better writer, with a James Gunn writing the script for him. But yeah, I definitely think this is one of the better remakes of all time, definitely for horror. But it's just not one I go back to because of I never totally connect. I mean, I like Sarah Polley a lot. I always love Ving Rhames, but out of them, the rest of them, I don't know. I don't think I really ever connected.
Seth, what about you?
This movie is just batshit insane fun from beginning to end. I remember kind of being excited to go see this in the theater because I was such a huge fanboy of Romero. And even though it doesn't even really pretend to be Romero's story at all, it's its own story just set in a mall. I just remember just being in the theater for the first time and just right from the opening sequence, just being completely immersed in it and just thinking of how fun it is. Zack Snyder, as a director, he can bring some energy to stuff. And I think that opening scene, there's a lot of energy with the way the camera is positioned and moves. And it's just I think it's a fun rewatchable movie. For me, the original is far better and is one of the best horror films. But like this, I think is just like this is what I would refer to as like a party movie.
Yeah,
you put it on at a party with a bunch of friends, and it's just fun.
Yeah. Plus, you get some Johnny Cash at the very beginning of the movie, showing what's going on in the rest of the world, which I love.
And the man comes around.
Man comes around, yeah.
Or the fucking Muzak version of Disturbed.
Yeah.
Or don't they play people who died in the ending credits?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Jim Carroll band. Yeah, it was a really fun movie. It was of its time. And just like the little bitty details. That's what I remember. The little things that Zach did. The little girl hopping up in the hallway,
Yeah,
and
I love that.
and just like one of my favorite moments, of course, was where her husband's chasing her in the car, and he like a dog sees a woman in her yard, just like darts over to her instead, and
Yeah.
he keeps driving. I'm like, it's little things like that I fucking just loved about that movie.
That opening's so good because like when she's driving through the neighborhood, you see all the stuff going on, and then eventually she gets out of the neighborhood and they pull back and you see the car run right into the
That
gas
God's eye
station.
view of the truck, the crash.
Yeah, you see, well, I think it's Milwaukee is all like smoke and fire. It's just so crazy.
The way she like collapses into the tub when she finally gets into the bath.
Yeah.
It was just so violent and like Seth said, just a lot of energy, exciting. And so not only is it not Romero's movie in story, but in atmosphere and speed, and it is its own thing. It take away all, and it's not Dawn of the Dead. It's it really. And I think I just remember when it came out, like this I loved it. I did. I really loved it. I just think I just say that I don't go back to it because I'd rather watch the original. Because I don't watch movies again and again as I used to.
You're all about finding new stuff.
Yeah, it's like there's so much I haven't seen that I'm like, I have to really be wanting that comfort feeling or wanting to learn from a movie to go back to it now. And this one, I don't know if I'll ever pop it back in, honestly, but I've seen it at least 10 times.
I do think there are. I do like the characters in it too, and I feel like a lot of them are fun. Like CJ, he kind of starts off as a dickhead, but he's
I did like his arc. I did.
Yeah.
I think it was good. Yeah.
And then I also like that final moment with Michael. He sends him away in the boat. I thought that was an effective moment. I hate the all the stuff in the end credits. I feel like that just kind of ruins the movie. I just wish it just ended with the way it did before the credits started rolling.
I agree on
That
that.
doesn't bother me. But yeah, I love it. I watch it not like all the time, but I do watch it occasionally here and there, at least once a year. Coming in at
that makes me think of something real quick about post-credit scenes. Do you think post-credit scenes are good or bad for films? Because it's gotten to the point where when you sit there at the end of the movie, everyone's like, "Is there a post-credit scene? Should we stay? Should we stay?" And it's like, instead of embracing that last moment, like Seth's talking about, the proper ending. This is what you should walk away with. But no, I'm going to walk away with, oh, Captain America said hi to Tony Stark. Okay.
Yeah.
Like
they're useless now. I mean, even like the last several Marvel movies I went to, I get up to leave once the credits start rolling, and everyone's like, "But what about the mid credit scene?" I'm like, I don't care. They're all useless. They're all just for like setting up the next event. And I don't know. I just feel like they're just cameo porn, essentially. It's just, hey, we got this character for this one scene, and it has like no great consequence.
I just think it's kind of hurt that the importance of a beginning and end. This is the movie you're watching, not the movie you're going to see next year, or in 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So like everything, like it just seems like most movies it's just about selling the next product. You can't tell a single servant story anymore. You have to have, it's like I hate to keep picking on Marvel, but like, you know what I mean? It just feels like they're no longer focused on the individual stories and characters. It's all about that bigger,
Getting to Avengers 7 or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
yeah. And I was thinking like the importance of sequels when I was growing up, because sequels weren't normal until the 80s.
Mhm.
And you didn't think you were going to get a sequel. You'd watch a movie and you're like, oh, that was great. And then, 3, 4, 5 years later, Beverly Hills Cop 2 comes out and you're like, holy shit, they made another Beverly Hills Cop movie. You were excited about it because you weren't expecting it, and you weren't. So, now it's like sequels are almost going to happen no matter if the movie's at all successful. There's going to be another one.
Mhm.
And so, and then they're announced before they're even like cast. They're announced before they've been written. They're announced like where it's like you didn't even know that the sequel was coming then until you went to the movie theater and saw the trailer. Oh shit, they made a new one. So, how long's it been since you were on Elm Street? Like, that's when I knew Nightmare 4 existed. It's like they weren't, so the whole culture of the next one, the next one, the next one, the future, except for me being right here in this moment watching this movie and getting that finale, like you said, of, oh, we got to tag on a little more to make the credits more exciting. And it's like, no, I don't need to see them have zombies on the island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm back. The internet went out for a minute.
All right, I interrupted the next one. Was it 4? Was it
Number 4,
Body Snatchers?
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The original is a great movie.
Yeah, this remake, I think, is one of the most brilliantly shot horror remakes of all time. Philip Kaufman understood the assignment when he made this film. The filmmaking alone is just, I think, a marvel with the way that he captures the sense of paranoia and the uncertainty of the characters. This movie is, to me, it's one of the best remakes of all time. It takes elements from the original book and original movie, does its own thing, and I just think the way it was shot and the way it was edited, it just really, it was all about the atmosphere and the tone and just kind of capturing the spirit of the story. And it's got one of the best endings of all time as well.
Yeah, it does. I like movies that you don't know who to trust. There's a lot of paranoia, and it's got a really great cast. I was very surprised. I watched the original and then this back to back, and they're very similar and they're very different. And I love the cast. Yeah, Leonard Nimoy's in this, Jeff Goldblum, and of course Donald Sutherland, and a bunch of others. It's just a really great movie. And again, if this was not a remake, this would be. I honestly, I don't know. I think this is one of the best horror movies, maybe top 100 in my opinion. But without the original, I think it'd be like higher if that makes sense. If this was the original, but yeah, I love this movie. Nate, what about you?
I need to watch it again. Like, I've seen it twice, and I never like clicked with me. I don't know, but I just pulled it off my shelf. So like, I gotta watch this fucking movie again because like I get, yeah, it was beautifully shot, amazing cast, but for some reason he never grabbed me. Um,
Do you like the original?
yeah, I like the original. Um,
Original's way ahead of its time in my
Well,
opinion.
yeah,
It's based on a book.
I think we talked about like when we did our like what's the most important movie of each decade. You know, I think we were kind of debating on the 1950s if it should be Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or I can't remember what the other movie we were kind of bouncing back and forth on. What else was in the 50s that we thought?
The Fly, maybe?
No, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
No, Creature.
We were thinking it was either Creature or Invasion of the Body Snatchers would be the ultimate 1950s horror film, must see film. I don't know. I got it. Like I said, I can't give you an honest opinion on Invasion of the Body Snatchers because it's just not a movie that I know well enough or connected strongly to. But it's like I don't have an opinion on it, good or bad, kind of thing. Like I don't think it was a bad movie. It's kind of like similar like I talk about Blade Runner. You know, I know Blade Runner is a masterpiece, and I won't argue against that at all. It is. It's phenomenal. The filmmaking is phenomenal. It had so much inspiration on the genre. It's probably one of the top like most important science fiction films ever made. Top 10. I never clicked with it. So I think that's kind of how this movie is. But again, I respect it enough that I pulled it off my shelf just now, and I got to watch it. I got to watch it again and really
watch it and report back.
Have an opinion for it, you know.
So the funny thing about our top 4, they're all remakes from the 1950s. So yeah,
you know why that is.
What's that?
You know why that is? Well, there's I think there's 2 reasons. We didn't know they were remakes when we saw them, probably because they came out in the 80s and 70s, and they were new to us. They were fresh to us, and that's why people our age or generation tend to shit on the ones that came out in the last 20 years because they were remaking the movies that we grew up on. So the guys who grew up on the 50s movies probably thought that these movies were shit. But the other thing is the quality of filmmaker making them. We have some of the best filmmakers of that time making these remakes that we're about to talk about. And that's a big deal. You know, why is Nosferatu great? Because Robert Eggers is one of the great filmmakers of today. You know, how many new movies in the last 20 years made our list other than Nosferatu?
So that's it. In the top, I mean, other than you having it from 2017, but in the top 10, The Wolfman from 2010, Hills Have Eyes. I mean, 2010 is still 15 years ago, where Nosferatu is last year. It wasn't even barely last year. It was like 3 months ago.
So I think it has a lot to do with what we saw. Like, I mean, when I saw when I saw all these movies we're about to talk about, I didn't know that the originals existed.
So yeah, the next one, which I'll go ahead and throw up on the screen, I knew there was a original, The Blob.
Yeah, I knew there was a Blob.
That one I knew. And I do think The Blob, the original Blob, is not very good. So this is another case where, in my opinion, I think the remake is better in many ways. The casting, the story, the effects, of course. Steve McQueen's not, almost 30, playing a 17-year-old. This is such a great movie. It's very immersive too. You get kind of like, I feel like it feels like it could be your town, and it feels like you almost live in that town in some ways. For me, anyway. But what do you guys think of The Blob?
What do you think, Seth?
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about The Blob during our 88 show.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for me, The Blob, this remake and the original are pretty nostalgic for me. My parents had the original Steve McQueen Blob film on VHS, and we watched this remake quite a lot in my household too. So yeah, this is definitely one of the best remakes of all time, as well as Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Just it's a lot of fun. Yeah, this is just a good time.
I think the original. It's been a while. It's been a long time since the original. I need to pull that off the shelf too.
Got some homework, it sounds like.
But the thing about the original was it's such an important movie for the genre in that time. Like some of the things in the Blob became stereotypes for the genre or cliches or iconic. You know, the meteor crashing on Earth and the small town and all that old little thing. Like, you know, like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, like, you know, took elements from that to build around, and it became this classic setup. It's kind of like what the old Dark House movie was of the 30s and 40s. Like the 50s is like what the Blob is, you know, like something comes from outer space, this and lands and takes over things. So if it wasn't a giant bug, it's this blob thing. And you know, I mean, it was just it just encapsulates that time of like 3D. Wasn't it a 3D movie original?
I don't remember.
It's just like schlock, you know. That I don't know. It was just something about that B movie thing of the 1950s, and this kind of fits in there with like The Fly and things like that. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like there's those those movies that are define that era, the day that Earth stood still, and fucking them and all that. Like they're a little cheesy now, but they're so classic that they're respect. I mean, the Blob's in the Criterion Collection, for fuck's sake. So, but
it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen the remake. But what I remember about the remake, and someone gave me the Scream Factory version, so I need to watch that. But I think what Darabont wrote it, right? With
Yep.
Chuck. I mean, this is the guys that made Dream Warriors the year before. So great team, and they really embrace the advances of practical makeup effects and what they could do with it. And that's why I remember like the effects and the killings and all that. It was very gruesome and very creative and very entertaining. And yeah, it's a movie I need to go back to. I always liked Shawnee Smith, isn't she the lead? Like the lead in it. I was never a huge Kevin Dillon fan.
No, he's stranger looking than his brother. I'll say that.
Yes, I mean, although he really stood out in Platoon. You know, he was a little shithead in that movie. But yeah, I need to go back to this one. Actually, I don't think I've seen this in probably 25, 30 years. So,
dude, you're gonna love it.
I do remember it being good.
I love it.
And I love Darabont and I love Chuck Russell. So I deserve it. And both of them. I need to go back and watch the original too. It's been a long time for that one. I know I have both of them. So it's like I'm going to be watching some horror movies this week.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Well, you were jumping out the window. Coming in at number 2 is another 1950 remake classic, Cronenberg's The Fly, which the original film from 1958, I think, is stellar. I love that movie very much. It's if I'm watching horror from the 50s, if I'm not watching some Hammer, I'm watching The Fly and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This I just showed to both my kids. My daughter had seen it before, but my son watched it and he absolutely loved it. But he laughed a lot when Jeff Goldblum was changing into Brundlefly and how Brundlefly eats and all that stuff. But the effects are out of control, phenomenal. And honestly, these last three, the effects in The Blob are very good. But this one is one of the best body horror movies of all time. It's so damn good.
You need to play. Have you ever showed your son, or have you guys seen when Martin Lawrence did his comedy bit on this?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, like I think it was like one of Martin Lawrence. It's not his first comedy special. I don't know if it was HBO or something, but it would have been around 92, 93, 94, maybe like right before the show Martin came on.
Mm-mm.
He had a comedy special and he talks about watching The Fly and how he don't know, like he's talking about how Gina Davis stays with him like through all
Yeah.
that. And he's like, I don't know if I could have done that. If my girl started, like if I'm rapping with my girl and her ear falls off, because I might have to leave. So
Yeah.
it was really funny. And he did. There's just one part. I don't want to ruin it for you, but look up Martin Lawrence The Fly and see if it's on YouTube or something. Because I remember I used to crack up watching that. But this was a movie I didn't connect with. Again, I'm not a body horror guy, but I revisited it maybe 3 years ago and fucking loved it. Like, wow. Like, it blew me away. Like, why did I sleep on this for like 20 years again? Like, I'd seen it, I didn't miss it, but I just never watched it. And so when I watched it again, I was like, holy shit, this is phenomenal. And yeah, it's just a great, great, great film. And again, going back to it, one of the great filmmakers of the genre, David Cronenberg. Like, that's a difference when it comes to this stuff. Is we had important filmmakers remaking these movies, and these are guys who didn't have. They could have made anything they wanted, really, in some ways. Like Cronenberg had a pretty good career going, and he decided to remake a 1950s movie
And make it better, in my
and
opinion.
made it better. Like, I'll be honest, I love Vincent Price. I'm not the biggest fan of The Fly.
I like it, but yeah.
But The Fly fits into that Blob thing. It's a campy, it's a cliche, I mean, they kind of parodied it in Matinee, John, with Mant, kind of, it's part of the history of this genre, and The Fly has its place in that because of that. It defines that schlocky 50s atomic age horror movie, sci-fi, and it's not really science fiction. I mean, the 50s was very science fiction heavy, I guess, because of the spaceman, the space. That's what happened with our culture was so wrapped up in westerns and the cowboys and Indians, and then it was all taken over by the space race and astronauts and going to the moon and all that. And one.
Atomic Age of Horror was the 1950s for sure. That's probably why it's the one I've seen the least amount of movies. But yeah, we did talk about this one in our 1986. So I don't think Seth's got much to say, but
I mean, it's wonderfully directed. It's got a great score, great cast, great effects. I love everything about this film. It's definitely one of the best body horror films of all time.
and you like the way Brundlefly eats, right?
I try to mimic that in my daily life.
I thought so. I mean, you are Seth Brundlefly on my phone, so. We ready for number one?
What could it be?
I don't know that it's much of a surprise. Could be not only the greatest horror remake, but maybe even the greatest horror movie of all time. John Carpenter's The Thing. Take it away, Seth.
it's an okay movie. Yeah, I mean, it's in good company with the rest of them here. It's just so well directed. Uses atmosphere and suspense and great effects.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. This film was awesome. I rewatched it quite a bit. Went back to it like a month or so ago. Great stuff.
It's
My number 3 favorite John Carpenter film.
number 3 favorite.
Yeah.
In the Mouth of Madness, The Fog, this,
And then Halloween.
Halloween. Okay. Oddly enough, like I give this such high praise. It's probably 4 or 5 for me for John Carpenter movies, but it's such a great movie. That's as far as being a favorite. But the paranoia, the effects, the cast, everything, the location of where it takes place. Fuck that! I would never go there. First of all, but it's such a great movie.
Yeah, Halloween's my favorite Carpenter movie, but this is John Carpenter's best movie. I feel pretty confident saying that. And what's phenomenal about it is like it was so panned and shit on when it came out, but it's just, and that's what I always like. They say now, like you have to wait 10 years or even 20 years to know if a movie is going to be great or really is great.
Mm-hmm.
Because nowadays everyone has such a knee-jerk reaction. If the movie doesn't do well in a week, they pull it. And they say, oh, it's a piece of shit. It's a piece of shit. Well, people were saying this was a piece of shit, 40 years ago. And now it's considered one of the greatest horror films ever made. It's usually generally considered the best horror remake by the fan base. It is one of the most intense paranoia driven movies I've ever seen. It's inspired. I mean, the original's great. It is, but it's not this great. And, it's kind of like he took his love of Rio Bravo. I mean, he's been remaking Rio Bravo since Assault on Precinct 13. Anyways, like he makes these siege movies, these people stuck in a place, and there's paranoia and there's fears, and but you take John Carpenter's genius and you couple it with this phenomenal kid named Rob Bottin who made this incredible masterpiece of practical effects that still holds up today. And like, I don't know how you could watch this movie even today for the first time and not be like completely enthralled by it, completely into it. The cast is phenomenal. Kurt Russell's a great hero. I always love Keith David. Or is it David Keith? I was
Damn it, we did the same thing the other day when we were talking about
David, right? Yeah.
They Live.
Keith David, I always fucking loved, and he's so good in this. He makes a great opponent of Kurt Russell's. And Wilford Brimley is genius in it. I love everything about his performance in it. When he goes crazy and starts like, shooting at him, I fucking love him.
I like when he tries to tell him he's better now.
Oh yeah, oh god, he's so good in the movie. And then the blood test scene is so phenomenally good.
It's got to be easily one of the most tense scenes in horror.
It's just
got to be.
It's just a perfect film. And again, we just talked about the importance of an ending, and it's one of the great endings.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great opening, just the dog running through the snow. It's like, and I just feel like, I think John, I don't know, but I feel like this might be one of John's personal favorite movies, if not his favorite movie. Do you know, Seth?
What's that?
What is John's favorite movie? Is it The Thing?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like that. When I met him, I gave him like 3 pieces of artwork. I gave him a Thing piece, a Halloween piece, and I think a Escape from New York piece. And he just immediately gravitated towards my Thing poster and just really loved that one. But there's just something I feel like I think even though people shit on it, I think he knew that he made something exceptional there. I can't imagine what he felt when that happened. It's so confident. It's so, and again, it's not. It's a culmination of like by then he had been through Halloween, he'd been through Escape from New York, he'd been through The Fog, and it was a graduation into this. The Christine came out after this, right?
Yeah.
83,
like, the next year. So like, I think Christine is a phenomenally made movie. Like, I think it's a beautiful fucking movie. I think it's so well shot, so well put together. I think it's one of his better ones. It's like, but it feels like The Thing. I mean, it's not better than The Thing, but it's. And what I love about John is the variety of films you get. Nothing feels like the same movie. I mean, you get stuff like, you could see elements of like, Somebody's Watching Me in Halloween. You could see a little like, oh, there's a little nucleus there. And of course, the Siege movies, you can connect the Salt to The Thing in some ways. But he's such a great technician. He is like his hero, Howard Hawks. Howard Hawks could make anything. Howard Hawks made great comedies, great westerns, great noir. John Carpenter would have fit right into that era, the 1940s, 50s, making movies. I think he would have. He's just someone who just has a gift. Like I said, I love Wes Craven, but Wes Craven was not half the fucking director that John Carpenter was. John Carpenter was just a guy who understood filmmaking in a technical. And when I hear people talk about people who went to school with John or Tommy Lee Wallace and people, Nick Castle and all that, he was just a guy that was always so serious about the craft of filmmaking. And studying Hitchcock, studying Howard Hawks, studying all those guys. I'm just glad that this movie found its respect from the film community. Because it's not just a fandom, it's the film community. You'll hear guys like, Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez rave about it. You'll hear and even people who didn't appreciate it then have come around to it and say, "Oh, we misjudged this movie." Which one we didn't talk about on the list was Cat People, was on my list. Paul Schrader's movie, and I just so happened to watch like Siskel and Ebert talk about that movie when it came out and expecting them to not like it, and they fucking loved it. They said it was genius and Paul Schrader was amazing. And I think it was Siskel's, or maybe it was Ebert, was saying that Natasha Kinski could be the next Marilyn Monroe. She has that about her at that time.
Something about her, yeah, for sure.
But they were both in agreement that Cat People was a great, and again, it's a 40s remake. Carpenter's a Jedi master. Yeah, he's again, I love Halloween, but The Thing is easily his best film.
Best, I agree. Not my favorite overall, but there's so many to choose from with Carpenter. My favorite isn't anybody's favorite, right?
Yeah,
Prince of Darkness. Yeah, I love that movie. But man, I feel like there's like 5 or 6 different films of his that you could say is your favorite, and nobody would be like, say shit about it, And
even like
maybe even more than that.
Even ones people don't talk about. Like I know Seth loves In the Mouth of Madness. And The Mouth of Madness was kind of a forgotten movie for a long time. But from the day one, I love that movie. I was like, this is creepy. It was one of the best horror movies of the 90s. But one that I just watched a lot and adored and doesn't come up but much is Starman. I think Starman's a great fucking movie.
100%.
Yeah. So, and then when I finally watched Elvis, I'm like, damn, this is as good as any bio I've seen of and Assault on Precinct 13 was a great exploitation action 70s movie. Yeah, there's just unfortunately he did fall into that, started to fall off a bit in the later career that Quentin talks about, like, I want to retire before I make those type of movies. Quentin wants to get out before he makes Ghost of Mars. So, wow. And I get it. But at the same time, it's like he also made Vampires during that time. And Vampires,
I love Vampires.
Good. I like Vampires. It's got some stuff that I don't love, but ultimately, I think it's an overlooked gem in his filmography. But yeah, at this point, when you look at a career, and you look at from at least 1978 to 1983, 84, maybe I guess 84, John Carpenter had a solid run right there. I don't think he made a bad movie in that window, right? Because Halloween, The Fog.
I feel like you could go through 88, really.
I mean, I don't think They Live is as good as those movies before it. I like They Live, but I don't think it's as great as like Halloween, The Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing, Christine, and Starman. I don't. But then again, it is good, and I do love Big Trouble in Little China. I know you don't like that one. That's one of my favorites.
It's not for me.
But I think those movies there are just so. Even if you just eliminate Starman and maybe even Christine, but I think Christine should be considered because I think it's a respected movie.
Mm-hmm.
But those are fucking baller movies, man. Halloween, Fog, Gate, Thing, and Christine are. There's not a bad one in there. Like you look at Wes Craven, you can't really do that at that time. It's like they made Swamp Thing and Hills Have Eyes 2 and Night Run on the Street and like. And Deadly Friend, like it's like, well, that was good. Like John Carpenter has the better track record than his peers. Maybe
he really does, yeah.
Maybe Romero, maybe Cronenberg have.
No, because I think Carpenter. I mean, Romero had some great movies, but there's. Some of like Knight Riders people bitch about constantly.
I love Knight Riders. Yeah, like
I can't speak on it because I've never seen it, but I know I've seen people complain about that one. And
so fun.
I like Monkey Shines, but people complain about that.
Yeah, I gotta take. Yeah, there are some movies where George Romero kind of dropped the ball and didn't make something great.
Yeah,
but Carpenter to me was pretty solid into like the 90s. And then it kind of got like great movie, great movie, okay movie. And I'm hurting your feelings, Seth, but once you get like Escape from LA and Ghost of Mars and Village of the Damned, those, even if you like those aren't what he was making in the early 80s. They don't compare to those movies. Mouth of Madness, yes, I think you could put that in there as a strong John Carpenter movie. But the other ones are kind of, his lesser movies, his Invisible Man's. Even though I like Invisible Man, I thought it was fun.
I barely remember that. I need to watch that one again. But I think some of his 90s stuff is a little checkered here and there. But in Mouth of Madness and Vampires, both great. I don't mind, as somebody even mentioned, the Village of the Damned remake.
I don't hate it. I just don't think it's his strong.
No, it's not. It doesn't really feel like a Carpenter film.
No, it's an okay movie. It feels like a TV movie.
Yeah, it does actually. It does have that quality for sure.
It has a TV movie fit quality to it. I guess because it got such a big star-studded cast like the TV movies at that time. It feels like one of those made for TV Stephen King movies of the 90s or something.
It's not well lit like Silver Bullet.
No, it's not. Well, it's Silver Bullet.
Yeah. It's got some of these actors from the 80s that didn't really do much else. I mean,
And
Christopher Reeve was in
I
stuff,
should
but
love it because it's got Superman and Luke Skywalker.
it does, and Kirstie Alley. I like it just fine. It doesn't bother me one bit. It's not one of my favorites by Carpenter, of course, and not one of the best Christopher Reeve movies either.
It's low on my list, but I'm just saying, in that 78 to 85 or whatever you want to say, John Carpenter produced some amazing movies in that lot.
He did.
And not a lot of filmmakers you can say that about.
No. I mean, like you mentioned, Wes Craven, boy, it gets rocky after Elm Street. So, especially in my opinion, because I don't care for Shocker, but you know, what's that?
I love Shocker. I know it's not a great movie. I wouldn't say
that basketball one.
That's Wes Craven killing it, man. No, like Wes Craven's like in the 80s, like Nightmare on Elm Street, Serpent in the Rainbow, everything else kind of, and then you get into New Nightmare and Scream 2. It's like I kind of felt like New Nightmare and Scream were like huge leaps for him as a filmmaker. So I love Nightmare on Elm Street, but I just felt like there was a leap forward in the 90s for Wes. But then he also would pump out Vampire in Brooklyn or some shit like that. And you're like, oh, come on, Wes. But I think Wes was a guy of ideas. He would come up with ideas and he would follow those ideas. And I don't know if he was ever as in tuned with the filmmaking as John Carpenter was. I think John put craft first. And that was a very important part of, and I think he just had a better instinct for it. Some people are just
Wes was more of a storyteller, I guess.
Yeah.
And he was an English professor.
Yeah.
Quite the life he lived, my goodness. Well, it's 10 o'clock my time. I gotta start getting the kids ready for bed, even though they're getting old. Is there any final thoughts you guys want to say about the remakes we mentioned today or didn't mention?
Just real quick, I just want to say this. There's no such thing as a bad John Carpenter movie. That's only a myth, perpetuated by the deep state. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, back to you guys.
I don't even know what to say now.
Yeah. No, I guess my final thoughts would be stop fucking hating on remakes. There are winners. There are especially like when we talked about Frankenstein and all these movies that are based on existing material, books, novels, whatever. Great stories are always great stories. And just because one filmmaker got to it decades earlier doesn't mean that filmmaker is the only one who could do it well. So you take an artist today and one of the best filmmakers, let's just say David Fincher decided to remake The Thing. It's probably going to be fucking good. It could even be better than Carpenter's because he's that fucking good at what he does. Not saying it would be, but I'm just saying that this whole idea that it's not that can't be done better. It's just that's the one you love. That's the one your heart's connected to. That's the one you know. That's the one you're biased for. So, again, you said that, our top list is these movies that we saw in the 80s as kids, as young people. We didn't know about the fucking Fly or the Invasion of the Body Snatchers or whatever. So that was like my friend Sean, his favorite movie is the Night of the Living Dead remake. He saw that one first and he fucking loved it. Why? Because it's a great story. It works. You didn't, so you can go back and look at the 1968 movie and go, oh, that's really great too. But if you saw the 1990 movie first and it had that story is so impactful and so powerful and works, and it wasn't poorly done, it can have the same impact. So, and I think that's just true of all movies. Just like we can talk about sequels. There's people who, I remember that kid who loved Halloween Resurrection, and that was his favorite Halloween movie. It was his favorite horror movie. And I
Poor
thought,
guy.
must have been the first Halloween movie that you saw. And he said it was. I was like, that makes sense to me because you fell in love with this mythos, this Halloween, Michael Myers, Laurie Strode mythos. It's there. It worked. And that was your first taste. That's why I generate usually to the first movie in a series, and sometimes like Clerks will always be my favorite Kevin Smith movie. Reservoir Dogs will always be my favorite Quentin movie. They were the first exposure to that person's vision or their story or whatever. So I just think that's the purpose of remakes in anyway. It's not for us. It's for the next generation to discover that story, those characters, those themes, those things. So, I think people, and I get it, because in the 2000s, they were overkilling the remake. They just decided, let's remake every fucking thing. And they were doing it. But the truth is, the remake thing has not been what it was over the last decade. People still bitch about remakes, but I'm like, dude, it's like maybe 2 remakes a year, if that. It's not that big of a deal anymore. It's not that rampant. So, I just think, people have chilled out on it. But it used to be like people were like getting their pitchforks whenever a remake was announced and ready to shit for it.
The last few years, how many remakes we've had. I don't know. I know Nosferatu. Here's a question real fast before we go. How would you feel about Eggers remaking American Werewolf in London? Would you all welcome that?
No, because so much American Werewolf in London is about the humor, and Robert Eggers isn't a humor guy.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be American Werewolf in London because American Werewolf in London is a comedy. It's scary, it's horrifying, but it's a comedy. I'm looking forward to his werewolf movie though.
Yes.
Oh, that's the next thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's doing a werewolf film, and I'm looking forward to that. I hope it's, because I think it's gonna be like a period piece. So like I'm hoping it's based on the real life like stories and myths from way back when. And like he did wonderful with the Berserker stuff in the Northman. So that makes me really looking forward to that. I would say I would rather Eggers just keep doing original films. Like he got his remake out of the way. You got that out of his system. Just keep doing original stuff. It's just not all that different than Carpenter, right? Carpenter did a remake of the Thing from Another World. Then he eventually did a remake years later of Village of the Damned. But he's got a lot of original stuff in there beforehand. So I would rather Eggers do original stuff.
Plus, I'm waiting for the American Werewolf in Venice. When are we getting that?
Well, here's a question to piggyback off of that. Seth, since it is like, that's your favorite movie, right?
It's my favorite horror film, American Werewolf.
Yeah, favorite horror film. If you were a producer and your job was to remake it and hire a director, who would you hire?
That is a tough one. Because for one thing I've been saying for a bit now, like on the web shows that I do, is I don't feel like there should ever be a remake of American Werewolf in London when there's plenty of material to work within that world, spiritual sequel or whatever. Like there's so much you could do with the Slaughtered Lamb of East Proctor and so on and so forth. That'd be tough because you'd have to find someone who does have a good balance of horror and comedy. One of the things I've been saying for a while with American Werewolf in London is I don't really feel it's a horror comedy. I think it's a horror film with some comedic elements in it, and those comedic elements come from the characters and their personalities, and the horror John Landis takes very seriously.
It's
But
got some very British humor. It's very
yeah,
British in its humor. It's funny that an American made it. It does have their sensibility is towards funny.
yeah,
I guess I mean he probably grew up on watching Monty Python and all that shit. So
yeah. I would say this. I would love for the guys who made When Evil Lurks to do a werewolf film.
Mm.
yeah,
I mean,
They could do a terrifying werewolf, I think,
know how they'll treat a little girl.
and a dog.
you know
Yeah.
who would be good? You know who I would hire to direct an American Wolf of London remake? Edgar Wright.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I could see that too.
So I would go with. He's British. He's got the humor. He's made horror movies. He's a fan of the genre. I could see him doing justice to it.
Yeah, I think I could see that. Humor would be right on with. Yeah, I definitely could see that. I think I could. I'm still waiting on the Howling remake. So
They remaking that?
no,
No.
they're hung up on whether or not they should remake the Howling or Marsupials. Just kidding. I don't know. I don't think they're ever going to remake it. Who knows? Anyway, I had to mention marsupials. It seems like it's become a thing for me and Seth. He really wants me to talk about marsupials with him. That movie. Have you ever seen that, Nate?
Yeah, I think that was the first Howling movie I ever saw. So that's why it took me a long time to watch the Howling.
So next Sunday we're going to be talking about Howling 3 the Marsupials, right?
Oh God.
Is that what we're agreeing to right now?
That's what happens to me if that's the topic. I'm out. I don't know, man. I don't ever want to watch that movie again, to be honest.
I got
And
some
that's like built up so much to where it's like, if I do watch it, maybe I'll like it. Who knows? I doubt it. It's so fucking weird. But anyway, not sure what's coming up in the next week as far as shows go. Tuesday night show. There's Werewolf Wednesday, another Wolf Cop movie I've never seen, and then we'll figure something out for next Sunday. If you guys have anything else before we go, oh my god,
the Howling 2 is worse than the dog biting your dick. You know from experience.
Yeah, from jumping out the window and then a dog biting his dick.
Man.
Anyway, you guys all have a great night. We'll see you next week.